So this hadith in Bukhari mentions an incident that happens later on, when the people of Medina revolt against Yazid and they want to dethrone him. So Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu gathered his close friends and his children, and he said, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, a flag will be fixed for every betrayer on the day of resurrection. And we have given the oath of allegiance to this person, meaning to Yazid, in accordance with the conditions enjoined by Allah and His Messenger. And I do not know of anything more faithless than fighting a person who has been given the oath of allegiance in accordance with the conditions enjoined by Allah and His Messenger. And if I ever learn that any person amongst you, and he's talking to his close friends and his family, if any person amongst you has agreed to dethrone Yazid by giving the oath of allegiance to someone else, then there will be separation between him and myself. So now Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu starts to receive many letters from Iraq. They sent him many letters saying, come to us. If you come to us, all of Iraq and all of our swords are with you. So Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu then sends Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib to Kufa. And on the way, they get lost. Muslim ibn Aqil, and he had 2 guides with him. And they get lost on the way. The reason they got lost is that they didn't take the normal route to Al-Kufa. They didn't take the main route. They took another route because they didn't want to be caught. So they get lost, and one of the guides dies of thirst. And they almost die. So he feels that Allah is not facilitating this issue. Muslim ibn Aqil then sends a letter to Al-Husayn saying, let's leave this issue alone. Allah is not facilitating right from the beginning. So then Al-Husayn tells him, maybe you're afraid. Perhaps you're afraid. So he continues and he goes all the way to Al-Kufa. There, the governor is Nu'man ibn Bashir, and he's put there by Yazid. And he hears of Muslim ibn Aqil's advance. And when he hears of that, he orders the people that there will be no fighting. When Yazid hears this, he feels that he is not strong enough. Perhaps he is not strong enough, so he removes him and he puts Ubaydullah ibn Zayd ibn Abi. Zayd ibn Abi, the half-brother of Muawiyah. And we said he was a stern man. So he puts Ubaydullah ibn Zayd, and Ubaydullah heads out to Kufa. And Muslim ibn Aqil sends letters to the leaders of Al-Kufa. And he starts to take al-bay'ah for Hussein. And 12,000 warriors gather for Al-Husayn. All of them willing to support Al-Husayn. And meanwhile, Muslim ibn Aqil was staying at the home of Hani ibn Urwa. And Hani ibn Urwa sent to Al-Husayn. So now the governor, the new governor, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, arrives in Al-Kufa. And he sends spies and scouts to find out exactly where Muslim ibn Aqil is staying. And they find out that he's with Hani ibn Urwa. So he sends for him. And he brings him, and he denies, Hani ibn Urwa denies that he has Muslim in his home. So then he brings witnesses who testify against him. So then he says, hey, I did not invite him, but he came to me. So then Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says, bring him to me. Bring Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib. And Hani ibn Urwa says, Wallahi, if he were under my feet, I would not lift them from him to expose him. So then Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad had him beaten and had him hurt and imprisoned. And then his tribe hears of this and they thought he was killed. So they came to the palace and he tells them that he's still okay. So now Muslim ibn Aqil hears of this, that the man whom he's staying in his house is punished and he's put in prison. So he says there's not enough time to wait for Al-Husayn to arrive. So he orders to begin the revolt immediately. He starts calling upon the people, the 12,000 who gave bay'ah to Al-Husayn earlier. And when he calls on the 12,000, only 4,000 of them respond. Only 4,000 of them respond. So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad gathers the leaders of Al-Kufa, and he incited them to gather an army, and he threatened them, and he warned them. So he used all the techniques possible. So they began to write to his people who were around Muhammad ibn Aqil. The people who joined Muhammad ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib, this 4,000, their leaders started to write to them, saying, leave that army. So only 500 remained. 12,000 promised him, 4,000 come out, and now only 500 remain. And they kept withdrawing at night, and by night time, none remained with Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib. Nobody. So he escaped, and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sent forces searching for Muslim ibn Aqil. So they caught him when he was in a house, and they sent 70 men, and they went out and they asked him to come out, and he refused. And they asked him again twice to come out, and he refused. And as they were about to attack him, he came out to them and fought them with the sword until he became exhausted and he became weakened. And then they took him to the palace, to Ibn Ziyad. And Ibn Ziyad killed him and threw his body to the people. Even though this is Muslim ibn Aqil, the brother of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He killed him and he threw his body to the people. And he also killed Hani ibn Urwa, the one who had him in his house. And he challenged his tribe. So he was very stern, very harsh man. So Al-Kufa calmed down. Meanwhile, Al-Hussein doesn't know all this is happening. He's still on his way to Al-Kufa, not knowing what's going on. So he head out, despite the advice of his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, who tells him, don't go out until you get the bay'ah, then you can go. The majority of people advised Al-Hussein not to go out to Al-Kufa. Abdullah ibn Umar gives him advice, don't go out of Mecca until you take the bay'ah from everyone else. And he insists. So then Abdullah ibn Umar bursts into tears, and both of them weep, and they bathe each other for well. And then Abdullah ibn Abbas comes to Al-Hussein and he tells him, don't leave Mecca, don't be away from the house of Allah. Your respected father preferred Kufa to Mecca and Medina, but don't you know how the inhabitants of Al-Kufa treated him? They martyred him. They robbed your brother Al-Hasan. And what he's referring to, Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa for those short 6 months, they used to give him a hard time, and they entered his home and they robbed things from him. They robbed his rugs from his house, things. And this is one of the things that made him disgusted and tired of the whole Khilafah. So he's telling him, they robbed your brother Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu, and ultimately poisoned him to death. You must not trust them. Neither their bay'ah nor their promise is believable, nor are their letters and their messages trustworthy. So then Al-Hussein said, you are 100% justified in what you say. But Muslim ibn Aqil's letter has come to me, and 12,000 people have taken bay'ah. Before that, 150 letters from the nobles of Kufa have also come. So now there is no danger, and my visit to that place is the right thing to do. So upon that, Abdullah ibn Abbas told him, he gave him some more advice, and then at least he tells him, if you don't agree with me, at least don't take the women and children with you, because the inhabitants of Kufa are absolutely unreliable. You can't trust them at all. So he's telling him, don't take the women and the children. You don't know what might happen there. So then Al-Hussein insisted. And the only one who encouraged him to go was Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Ibn Zubayr told him, he's the only one who encouraged him to go. He tells him, there are 12,000 people pledging to you, you should go to them. But as we said, Abdullah ibn Ziyad in the meantime had ended the fitna in Al-Kufa. Al-Hussein doesn't know this, so he's on his way. And on the way he meets Al-Farazdaq, the poet, famous poet, returning from Al-Kufa. So he tells him, tell me the situation. And Al-Farazdaq tells him, the hearts are with you, and the swords of Bani Umayyah, and the decree is in the hands of Allah. So Al-Farazdaq tells him, the hearts are with you, and the swords of Bani Umayyah, and the decree is in the hands of Allah. Because when Al-Farazdaq left Al-Kufa, this was the situation. He doesn't know that now Abdullah ibn Ziyad had taken control and wiped out the problems. So then Yazid ibn Muawiyah, the Khalifa, sends to Abdullah ibn Ziyad saying, don't allow Al-Hussein to enter into Al-Kufa and bring him to me. That's all he tells him. Don't allow him to enter into Al-Kufa because he's going to try to take control of the city. So don't let him enter and bring him to me. But Abdullah ibn Ziyad then prepares an army of 4,000 warriors to prevent Al-Hussein from coming into Al-Kufa. And Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu is coming and with him is the letter of Muslim ibn Aqil. And Al-Hirr ibn Yazid al-Tamimi meets him and says, where to? And he tells him, I'm going to this town of Al-Kufa. So he tells him, go back, I have left no good behind me. There is no good in Al-Kufa. And he explains to them how they have killed Muslim ibn Aqil. So Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu considers returning. But with him was the family of Muslim ibn Aqil, his brothers. And they had heard of his death and they got very upset. And they said they don't want to go back until they avenge the blood from the killers of his brother or be killed themselves. So Al-Hussein said, لا خير في الحياة بعدكم. And they kept going. Said, there's no good in living after this. Let's just keep going. So they kept going. And on the way, they saw the horses of Abdullah ibn Ziyad. Remember the 4,000 that was to stop them from entering? So they saw them, so they changed the path to Karbala. And they put up a tent, and with him were 45 horsemen, and 100 footmen, and women and children. And the man in charge of the army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, of these 4,000 men, was Umar, the son of Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. He was in charge of the army. And Umar used to want the Khilafah. And Ibn Ziyad put Umar, Ibn Sa'ad, he put him in charge of Ray, which is the area of Tehran right now. And when he heard of Al-Hussein, Ibn Ziyad tells him that I will not put you in charge of Ray until you stop Al-Hussein. So he tries to be excused from that, and Ibn Ziyad insists. He tells him, I will not let you go and be in charge of Ray if you don't go and stop Al-Hussein. So he forced him into it. So he says, let me think about it overnight. And in the morning he was ready to go and stop Al-Hussein from entering Al-Kufa. So he went to Al-Hussein and he besieged him in Karbala. They surrounded him. So Al-Hussein tells Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, the leader of the army, of the governor, pick one of these three options. I will go back to where I came from. Al-Hussein is saying, I will go back to where I came from and leave me. Or let me go to Yazid, the Khalifa. I will go myself. Or leave both these options. Let me just go out to jihad. He doesn't want a part of this. So Umar said, I accept. So he sent to Ibn Ziyad. So Ibn Ziyad refused and he insisted. He says, bring him to me as a captive. So Al-Hussein says, no, by Allah, that will never happen. La wallahi. I'm not going to go as a captive to Ibn Ziyad. So then Umar ibn Sa'ad refused to fight. And he asked Al-Hussein to surrender. And Al-Hussein refuses to surrender. So at this point, Ibn Ziyad saw that it's taking too long. 4,000 warriors against 145 men. So why didn't he bring him to me? So he sent a man named Shumar ibn Dhil Jawshan, saying, if Umar has refused to fight, you take over. So Shumar arrives and finds them not fighting. And Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, he showed utmost respect to Al-Hussein. When time for Salah would come, he would order his army to pray behind Al-Hussein. And after the Salah, they would get up and line up again. So Shumar sees this and says, it is as if you don't want to fight. He says to Umar, it's as if you don't want to fight. He says, I'll take over. So Shumar takes over the army. So he advances with a group. And they surround Al-Hussein. Then the family of Al-Hussein starts to defend him. And they start to fight. And from the family of Al-Hussein, 72 people were killed. And from the group of Shumar, 88 men were killed. Until no one was left with Al-Hussein. Just about all of them were killed. The only one remaining is Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu. So they surround Al-Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there is absolutely no one to assist him. And then a young boy from the camp of Al-Hussein came running out of a tent. And they describe him. They said he comes out looking like the full moon. So he's a handsome child. He runs out of the tent to defend his uncle. And then Zainab, the daughter of Ali and the sister of Al-Hussein, runs after him and stops him. She stops the child as he's running to protect his uncle. And then Zainab stops him, and he insisted, and he got away from her. And he runs to defend his uncle. And he comes to protect Al-Hussein. And a man gets up and strikes him with the sword. So the child puts his right hand up to protect himself. And the man strikes it with the sword, and he cuts it off, and it's only hanging by his skin. So the child screams, Ya Abatah! He's screaming to Al-Hussein. And he tells him, Ya Bunay, ihtasib ajraka inda Allah. Await your reward with Allah. You are going to join your righteous forefathers. So then the men gathered around Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu from all angles, while he is fighting them off left and right. And they back off from him, and they described as goats run away from a lion. He's fighting them off fiercely. And then Zainab, the daughter of Fatima radiallahu anha, she comes out saying, may the sky fall on the earth. And she went to Umar ibn Sa'ad and she says, Ya Umar, are you pleased? She comes out saying, Ya Umar, are you pleased that Abu Abdullah is killed while you watch? And then the tears roll down from the face of Umar ibn Sa'd, and he turns his face away from her. He's powerless. He has nothing he can do. So they reached him, but no one would dare kill him. All of them, they encircled al-Husayn radiallahu anhu, but no one wants to dare kill him. So then Shummar ibn Dhul Jawshan comes and says to them, woe to you, what are you waiting for? Kill him, may your mothers mourn you, may you die. So they attacked him. And the first man to strike him was Zur'a ibn Shuraik at-Tamimi. And he strikes al-Husayn on his left shoulder, and then he strikes him on his neck. So al-Husayn gets up, and he's not able to stand, radiallahu anhu. And he stands, and he falls again. And he stands again, and then he falls. So then Sinan ibn Amr ibn Anas al-Nukha'i takes a spear, and he hits him with it. And Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu falls. And then Shummar ibn Dhul Jawshan cuts off his head. So in this way, they butcher the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he decided to return and to leave this affair. And Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah says that 16 men from Ahlul Bayt, from the family of the Prophet ﷺ, were killed with him. And Hasan al-Basri says no one on the face of the earth at that time was comparable to them. And from the sons of Ali radiallahu anhu, Al-Husayn was killed, and Ja'far, and Al-Abbas, and Muhammad, and Uthman, and Abu Bakr. All of them were from different mothers, but they were all from the sons of Ali radiallahu anhu. And from the sons of Al-Husayn, Ali and Abdullah were killed. And from the sons of Al-Hasan, they killed Abdullah and Al-Qasim and Abu Bakr. And from the sons of Abdullah ibn Ja'far, they killed Awn and they killed Muhammad. And from the sons of Aqil ibn Abi Talib, the brother of Ali, they killed Ja'far and they killed Abdullah and they killed Abdurrahman. And then Ibn Dhul Jawshan takes the head and he sends it to Ibn Ziyad. And Ibn Ziyad gathers the people and he put the head in front of him. And he had a metal rod in his hand. And he was hitting, as he was talking, he was hitting the lips of Al-Husayn with it, saying, Wallahi, I have never seen anyone as handsome as he is. So now this is the head of the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, and this man, Abdullah ibn Ziyad, is hitting it, hitting the lips of the head of Al-Husayn with this metal rod. And one of the people who witnessed this was the companion, Zayd ibn Arqam radiallahu anhu. And he said, remove that rod from those lips. فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ, I have seen the lips of the Prophet ﷺ on those two lips, kissing them. The Prophet ﷺ used to kiss them, kiss Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn on their lips when they were young. And Zayd ibn Arqam radiallahu anhu was an old man and he starts to cry, and the people cried because of what he said. So then Abdullah ibn Ziyad tells him, أَبْكَ اللَّهُ عَيْنَكَ, meaning may Allah cause you to cry, may Allah cause you sorrow. By Allah, had you not been shaykhun akhraq, an old man with no intelligence who would become senile, I would have struck your neck. With such audacity he speaks to one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So Zayd ibn Arqam got up and he went out and he said some things. He insulted Abdullah ibn Ziyad to the people. And then Ibn Ziyad sends the head of Al-Husayn to the Khalifa, Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Al-Ghazi ibn Rabi' al-Jurshi narrates saying, Wallahi, I was with Yazid ibn Muawiyah in Damascus, when Zuhair ibn Qais enters, and with him is the head of Al-Husayn. So Yazid said, woe to you, what is that with you? Because Yazid ibn Muawiyah had commanded that they bring him Al-Husayn, but not to kill him. Zuhair ibn Qais says, rejoice, O Amir al-Mu'mineen. Al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib came to us with his family and 60 men of his Shia, meaning 60 men of his supporters. So we went out to him and told him to surrender and abide by the rule of the Amir Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, or fight. So they chose to fight. So we went to them and surrounded them, and the swords took their toll on them, and they started to flee to where they couldn't flee. And then he continues saying, and it was as if killing some camels or taking a short nap. That's how easy it was. Until we killed the last of them. And now their bodies and their clothes are torn and their cheeks are baked by the sun. They didn't even bury them. They left them there in the sun. until an Arab tribe came the next day and buried them. And then tears come to the eyes of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. And he says to him, woe to you, I wanted you to obey me without killing al-Hussein. لَعَنَ اللَّهُ ibn Sumayya. Abdullah ibn Ziyad, his mother's name was Sumayya, so he's saying, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ ibn Sumayya, the son of Sumayya. May Allah curse the son of Sumayya. But Allah, if I were there, I would have forgiven him. رَحِمَ اللَّهُ al-Hussein. Starts to say, may Allah have mercy on Hussein. So the man thought that when he brings the good news to the Khalifa, that the Khalifa will give him something as a reward. And he puts the head of al-Hussein in front of Yazid. And Yazid starts to say, Amma wallahi, if I were there, I would not have killed you. And then they brought the women of Ahl al-Bayt. He had them bring the women of Ahl al-Bayt who were with al-Hussein to take them to Ibn Ziyad. And Yazid commanded that Ibn Ziyad treats them well. And then he sent them to Yazid. So they brought them to the Khalifa, who commanded An-Nu'man ibn Bashir to send men to accompany them to Medina. And the only one who was not killed from Ahlul Bayt was Ali, the son of Al-Hussein, who later on becomes known as Zainul Abidin, because of his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of the people from Bani Umayyah said, don't leave him. Wallahi, if he grows up, he will revolt against you and Bani Umayyah. And Yazid refused to kill him. And this shows, if Yazid were as bad as people made him out to be, he would have had him killed. So the women of Ahlul Bayt stayed with the family of Muawiyah, the women of the family of Muawiyah. And they stayed in the house of the Khalifa. And the women of the family of Muawiyah stayed with them for 3 days, crying over the murder of al-Hussein. And Yazid would not have lunch nor dinner unless Ali, the son of al-Hussein, was with him. And the amazing thing is that this narration of how Yazid treated them well, and he would not eat until Ali, the son of al-Hussein, was with them, is in the authentic books of the Sunnah, and it's also in the books of a Shia today. But they don't like to mention this narration. And when they were leaving to Medina, Yazid says to Ali ibn al-Hussein, and he tells him, may Allah disgrace Ibn Sumayya. Amma wallahi, if I were with your father, he would not ask me of anything except that I would give it to him. And I would prevent harm from him with all my ability, even at the expense of some of my own children dying. Saying if some of my own children had to die to protect al-Hussein, I would do it. But Allah has decreed what you have seen. And then He prepared them well. He gives them good provision, and He gives them clothing and wealth. And He instructed those accompanying them to take care of them, and they head out to Medina. This son of al-Hussein, Ali, when he grows up, the only one who survived, when he grows up, he has a great place amongst the Muslims. In the days of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, the Khalifa, he came to Mecca for Hajj. And there were many people in that Hajj. And the soldiers, his soldiers, he's the Khalifa now, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. And his soldiers were trying to open a path for him, so he can come and near the Kaaba and kiss the black stone. His soldiers by force couldn't open a path for him. There was so much traffic and it was so crowded that the Khalifa is not able to get to the black stone. So he and his soldiers stepped back and they said, we'll wait for a time and when there's less traffic, then we'll try to open a way for the Khalifa. As they're sitting there waiting, Ali ibn al-Hussein, ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, came. And when the people saw him, they moved aside for him. They started to open a path for him to get to the black stone. And he got all the way to the black stone and kissed it, and then he continued. So the Khalifa was amazed. Who is this man? The Khalifa his soldiers by force couldn't open a way. And this man, he doesn't even ask the people, and they immediately open up a path for him. So he asked, who is that? And then Al-Farazdaq was the poet. He heard him ask, and he responded to him with very beautiful lines of poetry describing who Ali ibn al-Hussein is. So when the news of the death of al-Hussein reaches Abdullah ibn Zubair, he becomes very upset. And he announces the bay'ah to himself as the Khalifa in Mecca. So Ibn Zubair took control of Mecca and had Mus'ab ibn Abdurrahman ibn Auf to lead the Salah there. And now news of the Meccan revolt reaches Medina. So they revolted and removed the governor there, and they put in charge of it Abdullah ibn Handala ibn Abu Amir Handala ibn Abu Amr, he was known as Handala al-Ghasil or Ghasil al-Malaika. He is the one who went out for the battle of Uhud without even bathing, and the angels bathed him after the battle of Uhud. This is his son. So now Banu Umayyah, they were mainly in Medina. And when this revolt happened in Medina, they ran to the home of Marwan ibn al-Hakam. And they were besieged there. And there were 1,000 people. So they had negotiations and they said, let us leave Medina. And the people accepted and they let them leave. Yazid ibn Muawiyah receives the news of Mecca revolting under Abdullah ibn Zubair. So he sent an army under Muslim ibn Uqbah al-Marri. And the army heads out. On the way, they met the people of Banu Umayyah who left Medina. And they got the news from them about Medina. They're on their way to Mecca, they hear the news of Medina. So he takes them and they went towards Medina. And they sent them messages asking the people of Medina to surrender. And they refused and they took up arms. And then a severe battle takes place in Medina known as Waq'atul Harra, the battle of Harra. Very severe battle against the people of Medina and the army of the Khalifa in Dhul Hijjah in the 63rd year after the Hijrah. So Ibn Uqba surrounded them and he asked them to surrender and they refused, and then he fought them and he defeated them. But not only that, even though he's fighting Muslims, he made their wealth halal and their blood halal. And anyone who comes out of their home will be killed. And he took their wealth by force and he took the things in the markets. And he had 4,000 from the people of Medina killed. After he takes care of Medina, he starts to head towards Mecca. And on the way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees that Muslim ibn Uqba, the leader of the army, dies. And in charge of the army now is Husayn ibn Numayr as-Sukuni. And in Mecca the people have gathered, and the Ansar of Husayn have gathered, and even some of the leaders of Al-Kufa, as far as Al-Kufa. His name is Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid al-Thaqafi. And he is the cousin of Al-Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Thaqafi. When he heard of the revolt of Ibn Zubayr in Mecca, Al-Mukhtar takes his people and he goes to Mecca. And then the Khawarij heard of Ibn Zubayr and they went out to assist them. Even though the Khawarij are against Ibn Zubayr, but they want to assist him against Yazid. And a man also by the name of Nafi' ibn al-Azraq, he takes his tribe, al-Azariqa, and all of his followers, they go to assist Ibn Zubayr. So now there's a large number of people in Mecca who are ready to defend Ibn Zubayr, and they're all against Yazid. In the 26th of Muharram, in the 64th year after the Hijrah, Husayn ibn Numayr as-Sukuni reaches Mecca, and he surrounds it. And he surrounds Mecca, but he can't enter it. They fight, and he's not able to enter. So he orders al-Manjaniq, the catapult, and he starts throwing stones into Mecca. Even though the Haram is there, they throw stones into Mecca. And the stones started to hit women and to hit children. Not only the army, they were hitting innocent people. And things became difficult. And Ibn Zubayr had tents near the Kaaba, and there they would put the people who were wounded to be healed. During one of the days, one of these tents caught fire. And the spark burned, and it caught onto the cover. The fire caught onto the cover of the Kaaba, and the Kaaba started to burn and to break apart. While this is going on, Mecca is being besieged and the fighting is going on, news reaches them of the death of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. He only spent 4 years as the Khilafah, and he died when he was 40 years old. And of the people known who died during his time were Salama radiallahu anha, and she was the last of the mothers of the believers to pass away. After the death of Yazid, his son Muawiyah ibn Yazid ibn Muawiyah, is known also as Abu Abdurrahman. He became the Khalifa in the 64th year after the Hijrah. And the scholars described him that he was a righteous man. And he was sick when he became the Khalifa, and he remained sick until death. It is said that he never left his house as the Khalifa, nor did he make any changes, nor any decisions. And he never led the people in prayer. And he only ruled or stayed as the Khalifa for 40 days. And others would say for 2 months. And people told him to choose a successor. So he tells them, I have not tasted its sweetness, so I will not bear its bitterness. I have not tasted the good part of being the Khalifa, so I don't want to bear the bitterness of of choosing who's the next Khalifa and having a part in all the fighting and the bloodshed that takes place. So he gathers the people and he says, I looked at this affair and find myself not capable. So I wanted to put a man in charge as Umar ibn Khattab rahimahullah when Abu Bakr turned to him. But I could not find anyone like Umar. Then I wanted to find you 6 people of Shura as the 6 people of Umar. And I couldn't find such people. So you are in charge of this affair. So choose whomever you please. And he renounces the Khilafah and he put no one in charge. So now the Islamic Empire is without a Khalifa. And the only one with Bay'ah is Ibn Zubayr. So now we return to the battles in Mecca. News reaches of the death of Yazid, and they hear of Muawiyah being the new Khalifa, and then they receive news of his abdication, that he has renounced the Khilafah. So then Al-Husayn ibn Numayr, the leader of the army who was attacking Mecca, sent to Ibn Zubayr, saying, we have no Amir. So Ibn Zubayr says, so pledge to me. So he says, yes.